tax season starts on the 29th. Can you get this passed before then?
You know, we're gonna do everything we can. I hope over the next couple weeks that we can get this on the president's desk. However, you know, I won't put a timeline that it has to pass by the 29th or the 30th, whatever it is. But there's definitely a huge movement of support since we announced this agreement yesterday.
Does that support include that of House Speaker Mike Johnson? What has he told you about this deal?
You know, the great thing about Speaker Johnson is that he's empowered his committee chairman to do the work, and that's exactly what we did. We went and over the last couple months been working with the Senate Finance Chairman to come up with what we think is a very reasonable agreement that helps American families, it helps the American worker, and it's equally divided between individual and also business aspects.
But the Speaker has not yet formally endorsed this plan. Is that the correct understanding?
No, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. But I'm not going to speak for the Speaker because I'm only speaking for myself. But we will have this bill marked up on Friday from the Ways and Means Committee, and hopefully it will be on the floor in no time at all.
Should we expect any changes at that markup, and what might they be?
We have the agreement. Of course, once you came out with the agreement, you have every individual that's asking for their tax provision to be included. And that's exactly what would cause the bill to die. And the whole basis is these are important provisions that have expired, and we need to extend them because it's affecting a lot of small businesses and workers. And that's why we felt like this was a good compromise that would allow us to be able to get something passed in this divided Congress.
Well, and I know, as you say, everyone has things maybe that they would like to change. There have been some pretty vocal calls, though, from members of your own party regarding the state and local tax deduction, the SALT cap, maybe have that raised. Is that something you're likely to agree to?
Like I said, we have our agreement, and the agreement is what's before us. If we continue to allow additional changes like that, like the state and local tax, it will sink the bill. And we want to pass this bill for the American people, the American family, and that is the focus. This bill will affect and help all Americans. It's not just going to help Americans in certain niche issues.
Okay, so perhaps the SALT cap to be dealt with separately then. We played a little bit of my conversation with Maya McGinnis at the... I'm sorry, would you like to...
Yeah, what I will say is if we're able to pass this bill and make it into law, that will show a proven track record of a bipartisan tax package. There hasn't been a bipartisan tax package in years. This would break that barrier, and then we can do additional tax measures because there's a lot of tax items that's out there. I hear more and more about them from members by the minute.
Well, obviously, you're right about how difficult it is to come to these kind of agreements on tax policy. That, though, being on the revenue side, and it strikes me as interesting, and Maya McGinnis said this to me in my conversation with her earlier today as well, that there is efforts to be made on the revenue end of the equation when you still haven't even sorted out spending in Congress yet for the fiscal year we've been in for months now. Is this being done out of order?
You know, it's being done with our responsibility. As chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, my responsibility is tax, trade, healthcare, Social Security, not appropriations. That's the Appropriations Committee. And so we can walk and chew gum. That's in fact what we did. And if you look at the tax package that we have proposed, it's not going to lose any revenues. In fact, it's paid for because we're eliminating bad tax policy, which is a prior COVID item that has showed lots of fraud that Republicans and Democrats both agreed that needs to stop, which will pay for this entire package.
I understand that you chair Ways and Means. You aren't necessarily dealing directly with the budget, but you will theoretically have to cast a vote in the coming days on this continuing resolution, proposed stopgap laddered measure to extend funding between March 1st or March 8th, depending on what program we are talking about. This would be CR number 3, if I have my count right. Are you confident that this will be the last
I'm not confident whether it will be the last. We're waiting for the Senate to send it over to the House, from my understanding, but I don't have any doubt that we will continue with the CR to keep government open and funded until there's a resolution on the funding agreements. I know that the Speaker and the Majority Leader over in the Senate was at the White House today to discuss trying to get to an agreement. They're still working on that, and that will be the result of how many CRs are necessary.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up that meeting. With our final moment with you, Mr. Chairman, Speaker Johnson, when he emerged from that meeting at the White House, said the U.S. border has to be the number one, the top priority, the status quo on Ukraine funding essentially can no longer stand. What do you need to see in a deal for it to get your vote? Are you on the camp of it's H.R. 2 or nothing else?
Let me tell you, we have to secure the southern border. The president, by the stroke of the pen, could re-implement some policies that he eliminated, such as Remain in Mexico. Remain in Mexico alone would help with the problem by roughly 70%. These are policies that need to be moved forward. They worked, they were helpful, they benefited the nation. The number one issue when I'm talking to folks back home is the poorest border. The border looks like Swiss cheese. We have to do something about it. We need to make sure we know who's coming into our country, and we also need to stop the fentanyl that's coming into our country.